Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition in our webinar series, a practical guide to AI adoption. So we're just waiting for a handful of people to join us. As ever, as I do, you join bang on time, so the presenters can worry for 30 seconds about how many people are actually going to join the meeting. But I think we're up to quite a few now, so we'll make a start. So joining me today is Ometis Managing Director Andy Patrick, and we're both particularly excited about this event because also joining us is Shawn Rogers of research organisation BARC. And BARC are a leading analyst firm for data analytics and enterprise software with a reputation for unbiased and trusted advice. Now, Shawn is the CEO of BARC in the US. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, Shawn. And Shawn is also a BARC fellow. Now, for over 28 years, I think my maths is right, Shawn has been an internationally respected industry analyst, thought leader, speaker, author, general instructor on data, business intelligence, analytics, AI, ML, and cloud technologies. So an expert in his field. And Shawn's former strategy roles with the likes of Dell, Statistica, Quest Software, Tibco give him a unique perspective on the enterprise software industry. Did I leave anybody out there, Shawn?
It was quite nice of you, Neil, to start the morning by reading the bio that my mother apparently wrote, the very long form one. So good on you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. There's a few on this call that may not be aware of Ometis. So we're the UK's largest dedicated click consultancy. We provide organisations with the insight and tools they need to use their data to make better informed decisions. And we do this through the use of analytics and AI. So we have over 25 staff serving over 200 customers, helping them with data integration, data governance, quality, analytics, and of course now AI. We're also Snowflake and Databricks partners, and all of our consultants are qualified in Qlik's various areas across the platform. So I will say now, without further ado, let me introduce Andy Patrick, MD, and Shawn Rogers, CEO of BARC in the US. Enjoy.
Thanks, Neil. And I think it's down to me to sort of go through a few questions, Shawn, just to sort of get your insights. But listening to your bio, I'm glad it's me asking you the questions rather than the other way around. We've got up on screen there our first question for the audience to see. So what do we mean by AI adoption? But I wanted to see if we could take a step back even from that to start off with, because I don't think you can go through LinkedIn at the moment without seeing a diverse comment about AI. It's kind of everybody loves it or everybody hates it. It's all encompassing. Everyone's talking about it. It's generative AI. It's normal AI. I just wonder if you could speak to, where we're at the moment and explain what AI means in an all-encompassing term and the different elements we might have in there.
It's a great place to start the conversation, because I think everyone today at this very moment kind of thinks AI is ChatGPT or the things that are coming off of OpenAI and some of the other, model building companies. But we need to pause for a moment and remember that AI found its way into the enterprise world a very long time ago. Many of the people in the room at this moment have AI running inside of applications, inside of their business intelligence platforms, inside of their e-commerce platforms, and so on. So I know that we have a tendency to think of AI today in this sort of generative AI scope that became super popular only less than 2 years ago. I mean, it was very recent, but it sort of hopped the chasm in a very fast way. Unlike other technologies, we've all been around in this industry for a while, and if you jump backwards to the last big disruptive wave, that I think maybe big data might be a good place to look, it didn't have the impact that we're having today, with almost fear of missing out and sort of hysteria around AI. But I want everybody to think broadly about AI. You have AI in your data management systems today. You likely have machine learning and predictive models operating in your BI and data visualization platforms inside of applications that your company is running. And even one of the newest and hottest topics is inside of AI agents. And it's different flavors and bits and pieces of AI. So don't get too focused on generative as the only one. It just happens to be the hot topic of the moment. And to your point about how fast it's moving, as an analyst, I start every day trying to keep pace with all of the news in the AI space, and it's just crazy. It's I've never seen it move this quickly. You must see the same.
Yeah, absolutely we do. And, I think we forget, certainly, even the software that we sell and implement has already got elements of AI in there. So it's easy for us to forget that as well. We talk about Click and the Insight Advisor and things like that. But yeah, we are seeing that customers are kind of skeptical when you talk about specific AI initiatives. So disregarding the fact that it's already in sort of data management systems, and we're using Canva to present our presentation today. We've got AI baked into that with Easy Write and so on. But if somebody's got an initiative where they want to do something more specific with AI, their own AI initiative, what are the foundations they need to put into place? What are the starting point for those types of projects then?
It's the simplest question you're going to ask me today. It's all
and the most difficult answer.
Well, it's the difficult to execute, easy to answer. It's all about the data. If you don't have your data strategy and your data in general in a place where it can feed AI, you're going to struggle to keep pace with the innovation that's going on right now. So it's foundational things that all of us experts have talked about for many years have become extraordinarily critical at this fork in the road around AI. I get to talk with end user companies on a regular basis, and I get feedback from executives at end user firms who are saying, look, the AI we're trying to do isn't working quite well, or we don't have accuracy where we want it. What should we do? And I often will say, I met with you a year ago. How did your data management project go? And you'll see the CEO or the CIO of the company go, oh, well, we didn't bring that one across the finish line, or we got distracted by a different bright, shiny toy of technology. And when we bump into that, we see companies that are really struggling to adopt AI because they don't have the foundational construction to build off of that base to do really cool things. Because ultimately, AI is only as smart as the data. So it's a pretty simple answer to your question.
And it goes to, we're just off the back of, it's event season at the moment. So we did an event yesterday in the middle of Birmingham. I think probably some people on this call actually went to the event as well. But it's exactly what we talked about as well, making sure that mastering data has to be the foundation of everything. Because I promised myself I wasn't going to say it, but it's garbage in, garbage out. And I said this yesterday, but it's exactly that. So I think it's really making sure that we can reassure customers that they're putting the right foundations in place, and that's where it has to start. But how do we get over this kind of fear of falling behind as well? Because I think that's what some of our customers are wondering, that other companies are doing this, they're doing it well. How do we keep pace?
It's a very common kind of situation. I learned and started using the phrase FOMO, fear of missing out, earlier this year, because it seems so incredibly appropriate for the time we're living in. I know that through our research, and I think it's fun. Analysts always have a point of view, but if you can infuse your point of view with some actual data, that helps. One of the interesting things that's happening around AI that's making everybody in the audience right now feel that pressure to hurry up and catch up is that the board of directors have become very interested in AI. So again, living through some of these disruptive cycles, I can tell you that boards weren't especially interested in Hadoop and big data back when it happened. It wasn't a topic at the highest level within companies. AI is a burning topic at the board level, which means all the executive leadership is talking about it. And then all of you who are in the audience today, you're being talked to about it. And it's coming from the highest point inside your company. 37% of boards are talking to their executive suite about additional funding vehicles so that they can keep pace with AI. So all of these things are happening at the same time. And then, as you said at the top of the call today, guys, you can't open LinkedIn without having 400 articles about AI every morning. And it just starts to get on you. So I'm here to tell you, here's the fact. We surveyed almost 300 companies worldwide, and we asked them, where are you at? What are you doing? And how far along have you come? Only 20% of the companies we're speaking to are what we would refer to as highly ready to do really cool stuff with AI. 80% of the companies we're speaking to are still kind of getting their whole program together, putting their strategy in place, making sure the data is ready. So if you're sitting here listening to us chat today, think about that. 80% of the people that are in the room right now are probably in the same boat you are. Only a small percentage are jumping forward and ahead. And we see that they're doing things differently. They're making different technology decisions, but most of these companies really do have a great foundation of data readiness for AI, and that's one of the important parts. But don't panic. what is the sign in the UK? Stay calm is
Yeah,
is the one, right? And it's just take a deep breath. You haven't lost the race because the race is just starting. So yeah.
No, that's great to hear. And we brought the next slide up on screen that talks about kind of the expected challenges that organizations think that they might face. So I suppose this is phrased almost like, what do you think the barriers are to sort of AI adoption and AI initiative? One of the barriers that I think when I talk to customers is certainly being able to find and pull together the right data. So it goes back to that kind of having that solid foundation that you talked about. But maybe you can talk to some of the points on here about the data privacy and security concerns. That is maybe a different message to what I'm getting from our customers. That's almost secondary because they've got to pull the data together first of all. But the respondents to this question are obviously very concerned with the privacy of data when it comes to AI.
Yeah, well, I think most companies that are doing projects that have AI are suddenly becoming extremely aware of how much data it's going to take and what types of data they'd like to leverage to do the work they're going to do. And this idea of data privacy and security raises to the top immediately. The other reason is to do these AI projects, it's a bit more holistic inside the organization. So more people are involved, and the more people that get involved means that the executives in the IT branch of your business know that AI is happening, and immediately upon seeing these projects, they have concerns about what data is being used. Are we using the appropriate data? There's also this theme which I see in times of innovation where companies over innovate because they suddenly go, oh, we could do this. And they don't always make sure that the opportunity aligns with their privacy and security guidelines and also the ethics of their company. So over innovating sometimes will drive mistakes. So we see this as a consistent challenge for companies that are working to do it. And when you start coupling AI and really cool business intelligence and analytic applications, again, you have to make sure that you're paying really good attention to the security and the data that's part of it. So it's just a very common thing. I mentioned that 20% from one of our surveys a few minutes ago. We see that this is a prevalent concern of theirs as well. So the leaders in the market are thinking about this topic. The leaders are also thinking about cost quite a bit. So that's the difference between the mass group and the sub cohort of leaders in the AI space.
Okay, and then final one on kind of these expected challenges as well, really, is that we had some commentary back from the audience yesterday at our event, and they were talking about sort of aligning what we were talking about with their business outcomes, with their their challenges that they're facing. So this is talking to the question about not just doing AI for the sake of doing AI, but making sure that it's aligned to a business objective. Do you talk to people around that area?
Yeah, so I did a survey last October, which is close to a year ago, and because this is moving so fast, one of the things we asked was what use cases are you chasing? What projects are in your queue? And so everybody built a chatbot and or a digital assistant or whatever you'd like to call it. And that was the number one use case. And that was, I think, as much to be able to tell your board and tell your CEO, yes, we have AI. And that's fine. Now it's becoming more sophisticated, and companies are going back to the right kind of thinking of, it's not just about chasing an AI project. It's finding ways to utilize AI to make what we already do better. So can I infuse data management with smart AI to help me with my metadata, to help me with data integration and lineage and all of these things? Can I use AI inside of an analytic application or a BI or data visualization tool to allow more users to tap into this resource through natural language queries and other AI tools? And so, yeah, right now, from an adoption and from a strategic direction, companies are exploring those avenues about how they can infuse AI instead of just running out and building a chatbot for their website. So,
super. Well, I think that segues nicely into the next slide as such, about talking about strategy. So you mentioned organizations that have gone out and built their own chatbot and done it for the sake of doing it. So is there a right strategy? Do companies go down and sort of partner with people that have done it before? Do they invest in teams internally and build it themselves? Is there any one which way to go? Or, can you talk to that strategy piece?
There's a couple of themes that keep popping up that I hear from end users, and I guess maybe the keywords. One of them is trust, and the other one is sort of like de-risk. So when you do new projects, there's a certain level of risk. When you're using new technologies that you may not have leveraged a lot in the past, that adds risk. And so when you are thinking about how do we make this a trustworthy sort of thing, you tend to go to people that you trust. So we asked that question about what is your strategy for doing this? And as you can see on the slide from our research, our past experience with vendor performance is really the key. So what end user companies are doing, and it's a good word of advice for everyone in the audience, they're relying upon and going to their trusted vendor relationships, companies that have served them well. As a matter of fact, early last year, we asked customers about this area, and we said, when you're waiting or looking at your trusted vendors, are you willing to wait? And the predominant answer was, yeah. We trust our BI tool. We will wait for them to install the things we want. We'll be patient from our end because we'd rather de-risk what we're doing and rely upon a vendor that we trust. And the same thing extrapolates out beyond the vendor to the partner organization and the professional services that are around these platforms. Primarily from an adoption standpoint, for everybody that's listening, your peers are relying on trusted relationships to de-risk their AI applications and projects. And it's working from everything that we're hearing. And it goes back to the original question, Andy, about, where are they looking, right? So it makes sense that it opens the door for things like smarter data management and smarter BI and analytics.
And for me, that's music to my ears. I've got a vested interest in this, obviously, because, we work with our customers closely, and we're all about the outcomes coming from the data. It's what we talked about yesterday. And whether that's an AI initiative or better use of their data through analytics, whatever it is, we're looking at making sure that they've got better outcomes from their data. But for maybe the wider audience on the call, and not just sort of favoring Ometis, but a sense of what type of questions should they be asking their existing vendors in order to make sure that they are, the vendors are ready for that AI initiative?
The answer is on the screen, the second highest answer, which is show us the proof, share success stories with us, show me customer examples. I think the best vendors and the best partners to those vendors tend to stay 2 steps ahead of what the end users need to accomplish. Not 40 steps. 40 steps can get a little concerning, like, wow, they're so far out there. I'm not sure that they're aligned with what we want to do. But it's kind of incumbent on vendors today to be a little bit ahead of the curve, show their customers that they are forging ahead on proper paths. And we're seeing that in the space. And then the proof of it is great customer examples, great success stories. And what's not here on this list, I would also say, would be industry-specific successes. That aligns really well with end users, right? To say, okay, tell me what you're doing in retail that's reaping great ROI that leverages generative AI, for instance. And so, yeah, proof. And proof is also trust, and it's also de-risk, right? It eliminates a certain portion of it because then the company you're working with has done this a couple of times, even in moments of super high innovation like we're in today.
Yeah, and that's great to hear as well, because we've got sort of customer examples where we've worked with them on predictive analytics over structured data, and more so now, we'll probably come on to it in more detail, the generative AI examples that we have as well. So maybe I'm conscious that we're probably going to have a fair few questions from the floor as well, so I don't want to spend too much time in one area. So if we jump onto the next slide, Neil, and talk about kind of the role that the different types of data plays when people are coming to their AI initiative. So I've said before, we work with lots of customers around their structured data, and it comes top of the list there. That's what people are looking to do because that's what people are used to. But I'd be interested to know kind of what are people missing out on if they don't touch on some of the other areas?
Oh, well, the one that's going to change. So again, we're in a fast-moving environment. Semi-structured and unstructured data are going to become incredibly important. And if I were to ask this question this morning of the same 335 global respondents, I think that we would see a shift. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to put a piece of research into the market, and we're asking this question differently because we know that they looked at structured and real-time and time series data in the early part of their journey for AI. But we also are very keenly aware before, that this idea of introducing documents and unstructured data and tapping into other like data lake resources that they might have is going to become incredibly important for AI as they move forward. So Andy, I agree with you. Everybody tends to start with the data they know best, and that's the data that's structured in rows and columns. But there's a lot of data in the enterprise that has a lot of value. And yeah, if I were to pick, I'd look at the middle of this chart and say semi and unstructured data are going to jump forward very fast for most companies.
Yeah, and that kind of, you've answered my next question actually in that response to a certain extent. As you know, I was going to say, you know, if you're starting from scratch and you're a company that hasn't really kicked off on an AI initiative, which one do you pick? And I think your answer was, you know, where you're most comfortable with that data, the data that you know the best, the data where you can have assurance that you've got the right accuracy, the data quality in that area. So if that happens to be unstructured data, that should be your starting point. If it happens to be structured data, maybe that should be your starting point. But it all comes back to making sure that it aligns with a business objective, so you are going to get an ROI out of it. So I think, unless, you know, if you want to talk a bit more about that, great. But that kind of answer, where should people start? It's an open answer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think the more complex use cases, because that's the fun part right now, we're starting to see more interesting use cases every day. And as we're looking at the complexity of these use cases, we're starting to see multiple types of data sources involved. So the customer data might be highly structured, sitting in rows and columns, but contextual data about the company or about other programs and so on is sitting in different types of data sources. And to get the best and most interesting outputs from AI, you want to be able to touch all of the right data sources when you need them for the application or the use case that you're doing. So, you know, if I were going to, you know, give a word of advice about where to focus your efforts, your structured data is probably a great place to begin, but you will almost immediately start looking at other data sources in your environment to add greater value to AI applications. So again, it goes back to the second question you asked me today, which is, I said it was data, because it's this is going to be the fuel for how creative you can get with AI. So again, looking at the topic of today's discussion, sort of this pragmatic view of how to adopt it, data, get your data ready, because that's the only path to success here.
And I think we have to be unapologetic in that repetition that we tell people. If you don't get your data right, you're not going to get the outcomes right. You're going to be making bad decisions off bad data. So I think that, you know, that resonates with people. They understand that. So that's great. Yeah. So maybe jumping on to the last slide now, and conscious that we've got time for sort of, you know, a general Q&A at the end as well. You mentioned Gen AI as one element of AI, and I want to focus in and sort of narrow down on it at the moment. But what would your recommendations be in order to convince organizations that they can find, you know, sustainable value out of unstructured data?
Well, the leaders in the market right now are doing a really good job of showing new use cases where unstructured data is adding context and better inference in applications that are running for Gen AI. So all of us online right now, we've all asked a generative AI engine somewhere simple questions, and often we see simple mistakes. I mentioned the high readiness sub-cohort that we look at. And I asked one of those engines a while back to actually give me an image. And I said, build me an image that has data in it. And I'd also like the words of high readiness to be spelled out in the image. And the darn engine couldn't do it. You know, so when you look at unstructured, it just kept spelling it wrong. And there was a meme going around the other day that most of the generative AI engines couldn't spell the word strawberry. And right. And that was in the news. And of course, many of us ran off to our favorite engine and said, spell strawberry. And of course, the engines caught up rather quickly over a couple of days, and they told their models how to spell strawberry so that they weren't listed. The data behind the model is the important thing. Unstructured data is incredibly interesting from a context standpoint. You know, when I've seen some really great demos recently where people are interacting with large language models that don't have the context that comes from some of the unstructured data. And so when you talk to the prompt or put the prompt in, you're limited in the insights that you can get. And as we add more data to the model and make the model smarter, especially through infusion of unstructured and semi-structured data, that context gets better. The inferences get better. The logic gets smarter. And again, I think that that's why we will see all of those data types from the last slide at different levels of utilization inside of companies. So yeah, it's great. But when you go to the Gen AI for business and analytics platforms, I think it's one of the greatest opportunities, because we're always talking about the adoption of a BI system. right? Certain percentage of our users use it, but certain people don't. And I think Gen AI inside these platforms opens the door really wide for a wider variety of users to speak to the data. And you can, the number one thing here on my chart is, submitting queries with natural language is an enabler that's pretty cool. And one of the other things I really like is that most of the BI systems now are explaining the findings. And I'm sure all of us have lived that meeting where we present something from an analytics tool or a visualization tool to a room full of executives. And sometimes you can kind of tell which ones of the executives don't really know what that chart means. And I'm not being sarcastic. It's the truth. And being able to use the platform to not only get the insight, but to explain it and narrate it and share it more broadly, I think is an incredible step forward to closing that value loop with analytics platforms, to explain what's going on, to help an executive or a user to see, well, what might be influencing the outcome of this insight? Why has sales dropped in the West? And AI in the background can start to bring that to the surface in a way that we just couldn't do a couple of years ago. So I think it's a very exciting time for business intelligence and analytic platforms to bring in more users, make the utilization of their platform smarter and faster and easier. It's just a colossal win. Now, the vendor community is in different places on this, but some of them are really out ahead already because they were using AI prior. They had machine learning. When we talked about the different types of AI at the beginning of our call, a lot of the BI and analytics vendors had AI in their platform. It just wasn't being talked as much about as it is today with the generative AI excitement.
Okay, that's great. And I'm conscious of time, but I wanted to sort of maybe just cover one more question here before we go to
Sure.
Sort of some general Q&A. And I don't know which one to ask. So I might merge it into one single question. You can cover a couple of the elements there. But I think we've got this dichotomy of public versus private. So yeah, how do you utilize kind of publicly available generative AI, your ChatGPTs, OpenAIs of this world, versus the kind of build it yourself or contain it yourself with the data that you provide to that from a learning perspective? So you've got that side of things. And then there's another dichotomy that I wanted to pick your brain on, which is the usability of AI from an end user perspective, which is what this slide talks to, what people are looking for there, the features, but also having AI baked into your tools that help the productivity of the developer. So you've got co-pilot elements that, it's almost that natural language, creating your SQL code from natural language questioning and things like that. So maybe you could just talk for maybe a couple of minutes on those two elements, and then we'll hand over to some kind of general Q&A that I might have missed.
So let me talk on the public-private kind of model idea first. If you are building your own large language models, well, bless your heart. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of cost.
Absolutely.
And I'm also I would be surprised. I'd love to talk to you directly and find out why that's super important to you. The model race is being led by very large companies with very deep pockets with more coprocessors and GPUs than we'll ever understand. I think that we are going to live in very shortly multi-model environments. So all of you that are listening and are thinking, well, we have to go to this model or we might want that model. Trust me, it's not going to be that simple. In the end, you're going to have a lot of small and medium models in your environment. Some of them will be embedded in solutions, and you won't even really have access to that model. It's just they're doing certain types of work. Part of our research has shown that on this public-private thing, that companies are experimenting with the APIs for the public models, but they're taking their learnings back internally and then doing things inside. There's a certain concern around the public side about oversharing your proprietary information. We've all read the stories about the developer who uploaded the company's code to have a model check it, and then finding out that their code was now in the public domain because they shared it with the model. These are articles that analysts like me will have fun writing at the end of the year about companies that failed terribly with AI. Don't be in my article. Be careful careful when you use public models. But I think there's a lot of great things in the public sphere. But I want to make this point. You all will have many models in your environment. Some of them will be hosted in the cloud on different platforms that you're leveraging. And some of them will be inside your firewall because you're teaching those models with internal proprietary information. Over 30% of the people we surveyed are also in the midst of researching and bringing in industry-specific models like healthcare, insurance, finance. And they're bringing these models in because they're really smart about that domain and they bring expertise expertise in the model that aligns with your business. So you're all going to probably eventually have specialty models somewhere in your ecosystem. So I think there's a place for both. But be prepared. You're going to need to manage a lot of models in your environment, small, medium, and super large for generic work. So that's my answer on the public-private. Andy, did you have anything else to add to that, or do you want me to jump into the second part of your question?
No, jump into the second bit. I'd appreciate that.
I think I love that you use the word productivity, because I'm very excited about how implementing generative AI and other types of AI in your ecosystem will save time, save money, make your job easier. I think it's a little scary right now. Some alarmists like to write stories that AI is going to cause us all to be unemployed. I don't think that's the case. Some of the best AI applications and uses are those that are coupling AI with humans, doing our menial tactical data and analytic chores for us. I think is a brilliant thing. And I like that autonomous, automated productivity edge that's coming with AI. And I think that a year from now, there's a lot of tasks that we all do in our environments that we won't have to do anymore, or we'll only have to monitor because AI is doing it for us.
So, yeah, time better spent elsewhere. So no, I couldn't agree more. And exactly. I just wanted to make a general point as well that, thanks for joining this webinar. It's a very different format to what we usually do. We're usually showing people bits of technology. So I really enjoyed sort of getting some, expertise and some advice from someone that's been there and done it and speaks to everybody about it. So yeah, I'll hand back to Neil now, because I think we might have some kind of general Q&A, and we want to open it up to the audience as well. And I think it's fair to say that no question should be, too small. Anything that you want to ask of me, but certainly of our expert Shawn, please fire away and get that done. Neil, I don't know if you've got any that have already posted a few questions.
There's been just the one question so far, and it's a bit more specific to Microsoft. So it's one of my colleagues has answered it. It's not really about general AI. So yeah, I think you've wowed everybody, and they're all very quiet at the moment. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to, or you'd like to raise your hand, and we can open up your microphone?
Well, I'll kick one off whilst we're waiting for people to kick in. And it's more of like, I think we've touched on it, but it's kind of, what is like just one actionable step that you might recommend to a business if they're looking to spend the last quarter progressing an AI initiative? What's the one step, the one thing they can do?
Copy success. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Find a use case that impacts your business, that, doesn't take 3 business quarters to complete. Start to explore AI as a team. And by the way, I feel strongly, and our research shows that you're going to need a team. It's going to be people from data engineers to IT teams, line of business, executive sponsorship. Just start. Is the best word of advice I can give everybody. Little mistakes will be made along the way, as happens with projects all the time. But I don't want anybody on today's call to be paralyzed with fear. We had that great slide earlier that said the number one concern is privacy and security. And that's true. But you have policies, you have processes in your organization. Rely upon the ones you have and expand, and bring the right team members in. You can get your, the American phrase, your feet wet on this type of technology. You can get into the pool without drowning pretty quickly. But start. Please begin. The technology is maturing rather quickly, and most of your trusted vendors are ahead of you by a few steps, and they can help you do this. Have that meeting with your BI and analytics company or the partners that you work with on it, and talk to them about what's working for our competitors, and literally hop on that train at a point that's already been proven to be a smart place to begin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your point there has almost answered one of the questions we've got, which is what one actionable step would you recommend to a business looking to spend the last quarter of the year on progressing AI initiatives?
Yeah, it's just begin. Stop watching, stop worrying about, and get into the game and model yourself after other successes that are happening in your industry or your community or space.
Yeah, and the other question I got is it's a bit more self-protecting, I think, which is some of the fear that's going around. What do you imagine data professionals will be able to do if some of their day tasks are automated by AI?
I feel like in the beginning, for the next year or two, it's going to free up data professionals to do more interesting work and contribute in stronger and more influential ways within their organization, to be more creative and innovative. I agree that over the long term, some jobs will be replaced by autonomous AI, but I don't think we're there yet because the accuracy still needs oversight, and there's too many things that can go wrong. I get to meet with customers in a lot of different spaces, and as you mentioned up front, my firm covers data and analytics, and we do data and analytics with CPM companies, corporate performance or business performance management companies that are dealing with financials, closing the books, consolidation, building out budgets. Well, you think about the hallucinations that we're still seeing with large language models today. When I speak to those customers and ask them what their AI program is, they say, we're waiting for AI to be ready. Because we have to have 100% accuracy because we're dealing with financial numbers. So, you know, it's still going to be different by different areas. It's going to be different by different companies. I like this idea of automating insights through the BI and analytics tools to give more people insights into the business. But to the core of your question, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, I do think some jobs that are doing more manual things will be supplanted in some way. But that doesn't mean that other opportunities won't arise. I used to tell people when Hadoop was a big thing, you should change your job title to data scientist. Today, change your job title to prompt engineer, and then you'll get to stay very busy for the next couple of years.
So what have I got here? I've got a late question. He said he may have missed the point because he joined late, but how do you maintain the training of your LLM, and how do you catch the hallucinations and wrong assumptions?
That art, and it is an art, is happening at high speed. So one of the things we're starting to see is to maintain credibility for the large language model is incremental utilization of vector databases, where the vector database is talking to the large language model to give higher levels of context and accuracy. I saw a great example last week from a company that is maintaining high levels of accuracy by, before it presents the answer, it's checking the answer to make sure that the things the model is putting out isn't incomplete. And instead of giving you a hallucinogenic answer, this platform is simply saying, we can't answer that for you right now. And saying no in a model environment is really good. Say no if you're not sure. It's and I think that's what a lot of the vendors in the market are doing. They're fact checking the output of the model. I saw a great example of if you asked a prompt about something and asked for a list of states that this happened in, they had a little trigger in their logic that made sure that the list that popped out wasn't the training data. Because if all it was doing was regurgitating or outputting the training data, then that might not be accurate. So I'm sure everybody on the call has heard the acronym RAG, and RAG is a component of your generative AI environment that you're going to interact with. I feel that it's going to be abstracted over the coming years and kind of disappear into the stack as something that is happening lower in your environment and not something that you're going to deal with every day. But it goes back to that point we made about data. Unstructured data is a big component of utilizing RAG to make your LLM smarter.
Yep. No, that's a good place to finish on, I think, Andy, unless you wanted to jump in there.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was just going to make one more comment that, you know, it goes to a couple of things that we've talked about there. You know, when people's job roles are going to change as opposed to disappear. I think I was talking with Alex about this yesterday, actually, that you know, your generative AI solutions are going to be good in, you know, legal settings and so on, but you've got to make sure that it's the veracity and the accuracy of the data is right. So rather than paralegals going through certain tasks, they might be changing to kind of data stewardship part of their role to make sure the data feeding the LLM models is right. Somebody else made a comment on LinkedIn this morning that I noticed that said, you know, people are just copying content and putting it onto LinkedIn, and then you've got LinkedIn's generative AI asking you now whether or not your content can be used to help learning. The kind of output of, you know, the rise of AI and specifically generative AI is it's actually going to create a whole raft of new job roles that is focused on making sure that the data that gets fed into AI models, LLMs, your retrieval augmented generation, is actually going to have to be checked, double checked, verified, scored, and you know, so we'll see that come over the next few years is my kind of observation or hope as well. We want to make sure that the data going in is going to be good.
Absolutely. And here we are at the end talking about how important the data is, because it's the keys to the kingdom when it comes to AI. So I'm glad you touched on that topic. We asked in one of our surveys what you're doing to overcome the skill set issue and how you're helping your teams. And a preponderance of the companies that responded to this said we're augmenting training. We're going to help them grab the new skills they need, because these people are important in the ecosystem for a company, and they have a lot of institutional knowledge. And if they can broaden their horizon and make them part of their AI function, these companies will just be stronger. So yeah, it's just so you all know, most companies are looking at ways to augment and train their staffs, not replace them.
Brilliant. Well, Shawn, it's been an absolute pleasure.
That's a positive way to end.
Yeah, no, really appreciate your time on the call today. Neil, any wrap up for you?
I was going to say the same. I was going to thank everybody for attending, but particularly you, Shawn. I hope everybody found it useful, informative. I'm sure they did. And then in terms of how they stay in touch with us, there's lots of ways you can stay in touch, but do follow us on LinkedIn. I think I would stress. Even BARC shared our post this morning. So it's the best way to keep up to date with what we're doing, what we're talking about, the product, and just data issues generally. So yeah, thank you again, Shawn. I really appreciate you joining us.
It was great being here. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the discussion.
Good stuff.
Cheers all. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.